This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From Not a Pipe Publishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Today's secret word is werewolf.
Welcome, everyone. Today's guest is E.D. Jones. Ethan is a weird fiction writer inspired by all the mad geniuses who make worlds out of words. His short story, Resolution, was published in an anthology called On Loss, currently available on Amazon. One of the two stories in the Written with Pride collection, Ferryman, was first read on the podcast The Overcast. Ethan is currently putting the finishing touches on his first novel, The Werewolf Astronaut, which he describes as a sort of science fiction horror comedy inspired by the likes of Bram Stoker, Douglas Adams, and H.P. Lovecraft. That's a great mix. Ethan lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma with his husband and too many dogs. Is there such thing as too many dogs?
I have 3. I don't know.
That's a good number of dogs.
Yeah.
He keeps a sporadically updated author page on Facebook called Right Sinister, so named because he's left-handed. So as folks who watch the show know, we always dress up in costumes like this, and the folks who are watching on YouTube can see us right now, but the folks who are listening on the podcast don't know what we're wearing. So tell everybody about the costume that you chose to wear today.
So I really can't talk about what I'm wearing without driving our audience insane, because I'm dressed as the Dark Lord Cthulhu, the great old one. And I'm sort of surprised you haven't gone mad looking at it.
I mean, I'm on the verge. It is terrifying.
I myself am having trouble kind of dealing with wearing this costume. I have all of these mad visions of non-Euclidean cities under the ocean and tentacled gods and all sorts of other crazy stuff. So I'll try and keep it together for the show, but this costume is really messing with my mind.
Yeah, I appreciate it. If we have any technical difficulties, I'm going to attribute them to the non-Euclidean geometry of the costume itself. I don't know how the computer is even managing that.
It's doing its best, and I think probably the fact that you're looking at it digitally and not live is helping.
Yes, it's protecting us. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I went with Marvin the Paranoid Android from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm going to a friend's 42nd birthday party tomorrow.
Excellent. So you're a hippie friend.
Yes, so I'm getting prepared. But the thing with the Marvin costume is it doesn't really matter so much the way you dress yourself. Marvin is not described particularly, it's the way that you walk. You've got to kind of plod, what's the point to any of this? And then it's the voice. You've got to have the Eeyore voice, but with a slight British accent where you just say, over and over, of course, here I am.
Life. Don't talk to me about life.
Yeah. And I'm left to watch the car while they go into the restaurant. That's.
Yeah, it's a really good costume, very faithful to the TV adaptation, actually.
Yes. Which, have you ever heard his audio version that Douglas Adams himself recorded?
I haven't, actually.
It is brilliant because he is so dry and very quick. And so he'll run over these jokes that I think any other comedian out there would go, pause for a laugh. And he just goes through it I just said this thing that is laugh out loud funny. And so as you're listening to it, you're going, I can't keep up because I keep laughing and missing the next thing. He's very, I mean, he was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. He really was. He's my favorite author of all time. And I was absolutely devastated when he suddenly died.
Young.
In college.
Yeah.
I miss all of the books he didn't get to write.
Right. Yeah, he was in his mid-50s, I believe. Wasn't
he? He was young. I don't remember exactly how old he was, but
when you've heard the story of how he came up with Hitchhikers, right?
Yeah, he was lying in a field, and I don't remember the whole tale, but I know he was lying in a field looking at the Hitchhiker's Guide to Europe, and he was like, "What if there's a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?"
And if I remember correctly, he was 3 sheets to the wind when he was lying in that field. So I think that kind of hard living of, drinking yourself to the point where you just, fall down in a field frequently, probably didn't contribute to a long lifespan, but we sure got a lot out of it.
Definitely.
so this is a show about procrastination, what we do
Right.
when we're not writing. So what has been pulling you away from your writing recently?
So in the past couple of weeks, I've been working on trying to sell my house. And so that's been a lot of cleaning and organizing and just the chaos of trying to turn a house into something that other people want to look at and buy.
Yeah.
And so thankfully, I have a husband who's very well organized. I am not. I have ADHD. And so he's very good at pointing me at things and saying, this is what needs to be done. And here are the exact steps that need to be done. So he's great about that. And, that's been very helpful.
Yes,
But it's been all about having to suddenly flee the house so somebody can look at it.
that sounds very, very familiar. My fiance has ADHD, and I'm like, okay, let's make a list. What are the things? She's like, don't tell me your list because I need to do this in my own order, and your list is stressing me out. And so then she's, my folks are coming in. My son's graduating from high school, and so we're trying to get the house presentable, and my dad is very much like your husband. Like the world is orderly. His living space is very clean. So I'm like, okay, we must present that when my parents are here, and that's gonna take some work from us. So we've been doing a lot of cleaning, but the selling process is a whole thing in and of itself. How's that been going?
Well, we just put the house on the market a couple of days ago, so it's early days yet, but we're really hoping that we get a nice tidy sum out of this thing. We're downsizing because our kid in college has moved out, and so we're just sort of rattling around this big house, and we're just sort of downsizing, going to buy something a little more manageable.
Yeah.
But when I'm not trying to sell my house, the other thing that really helps to help me procrastinate is I play a lot of TTRPGs, a lot of Call of Cthulhu, a lot of some D&D. Mostly Call of Cthulhu these days. I play online using Discord, and I have a couple of servers based on podcasts that I listen to where people put up games to play online, and that's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now, is it a pretty consistent group you're playing with, or is it different folks each time?
Yeah, it's just people put up like one shots like, hey, at this time I'm going to be running this, sign up for it. And so then you do, and you have a 4-hour session of a lot of fun. I do have a regular Call of Cthulhu game online every other Thursday. We're running this huge campaign called Masks of Nyarlathotep, and it is just an absolute blast.
I should get in. I have never played that one. I
It's a lot of fun.
I think that would be
Yeah,
really
Call
fun.
of Cthulhu is a hoot.
Yeah. Is it as, I mean, a lot of it I'm sure has to do with anytime I've done any tabletop role playing, it's the personalities of the people there.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I can imagine with the right group, it could be hilariously funny.
Oh, it
Is
is.
it very
Yeah.
funny, or is it very serious?
Like I said, it depends on the group and it depends on the campaign. I've had campaigns that have been absolutely hysterically funny, and I've had campaigns that have been crazy dark.
Yeah.
And have ended with everybody dying horribly, and you sort of walk away going, "Oh boy."
Yeah. Yeah. Where did that just go? But
But the one that gets even darker than that is Cult Divinity Lost. I've been playing a lot of that too, and it is specifically designed to be like if Zack Snyder was a Care Bear, that's what Cult Divinity Lost is. It's darker than Zack Snyder. It's psychological horror, and the whole point of it is you create a character with psychological flaws, and maybe he's done something bad in his past, and the game messes with you, and it messes with that. You end up in these really deep, dark, super serious scenarios, but it's a brilliant fantasy world. I've got the book, and the world building in the cult universe is really cool. It's very different from the cosmic horror of the Cthulhu mythos, but in its own way, it is also cosmic horror, but in a completely different way. And it's so cool.
Is it like instead of deciding on your, race and class D&D style, you're deciding on your trauma?
Well, that's part of it. Yeah, that's part of it in Cult. And in Call of Cthulhu, you also don't have race and class. You have occupations. And so occupations can give you benefits. I often pick author as an occupation.
Yes.
And you get certain benefits to doing that. And sometimes I'll pick something off the wall. But often with these one shots, you get a pre-gen and you're like, well, okay, I'll pick that guy, and it's made for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think author comes with its own trauma too. Like that
absolutely.
should. Why did you choose author? Oh, there's a backstory. There's something there, So what about in the news? What's been pulling you away from your writing in the news lately?
Well, all of the horrible things that my governor, the governor of Oklahoma, and the governor of Florida, and the governor of so many other states have been doing to my families like mine, and families with trans kids and trans kids and the trans community and drag shows and all of this horrific puritanical fascism that has sprung up over the recent times, and I'm very, very afraid of it, and I'm very angry about it, and I don't know where to put that anger at this point. So that's very distracting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really is fascism. There are people out there saying, "Oh, you're tossing this word around," and it's like, no, this is the ideology. It is not
Replace
a
the word trans with Jew and see how it looks.
right. I mean, this is absolute, and it's always go for the group that we can attack because we're going to move up the ladder.
And I'm Jewish, so
same.
We've seen this before.
Yes, exactly. Which makes us, I think, even more sensitive to people saying, "Don't worry about it. Nothing's going to come of this." Really, we know. This goes to a very, very scary place. It's really scary, and I have dealt with a lot of folks, over the last 5 years, going, "Oh, I'm sure it's not going to be that bad." You don't understand how bad this could get, and we are moving down a path. It is frightening.
Ron DeSantis is a terrifying person. Now, luckily, he's also
got no charisma at all.
He has no charisma, and he has a real temper.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a detriment. I mean, remember back, it was 20 years ago when ended a presidential campaign. But I don't know. Since then, we've had Trump. So I don't know what can end a presidential campaign.
I used to believe nobody would have a political future if they didn't look like a game show host. Like when I was a kid, they all looked like game show hosts, and then Trump came along and I was like, oh, that's been blown up. Look doesn't matter anymore. And then, DeSantis has got the game show host look. He just, he's got the temper. He is just so stiff and wooden and, nasal voice and bizarre. And so I'd like to think, because he's so unappealing, he's not going to take off, but he is downright evil. Like the way he chooses policies, it's scary.
It's not that I have no hope. It's that I have no faith that we will be too smart for that. Because 2016 happened, and I have no faith that we will be smarter than anything after 2016.
It's genuinely frightening, and people shouldn't feel like, one election means we'll never go back there again. Like we're really, really close to the line. I listen to Pod Save America, and they're always reminding folks, we're still 70,000 votes away. Like it could come back. And as far as what's going on the state and local level, it's really, really scary.
The school board stuff and the banning books. But I've read recently that there have been a few libraries that have and public citizens or private citizens who have actually started suing about the book bans, and people have well, let's ban the Bible because it also has, sex and violence.
And there was one where some folks successfully went under this law. You can ban the Bible, and so maybe there will be some, some second guessing. But one of the things that is striking to me about that I've learned over the course of this last few years is, we come from one particular framework where we say, if we can show you logically that what you are doing is inconsistent, you'll step back. And you'll reflect and you'll realize this doesn't make sense. And that does not apply within the ideological framework of the current, GOP, because their underlying principle is freedom is for me, not you.
Yeah, that's 100%. You nailed it. It's my freedom to live my way, and the rest of the world better get in line because anything outside of my experience is wrong.
And so if you point out hypocrisy within that framework, if you say you're being a hypocrite,
they don't
that
care.
Is the ideology.
And they just dig in and and it's like I don't know how to fight that. You hear it's like there's a concept called hypernormalization and asymmetrical warfare that has been used by Putin, and it's used in American politics all the time, where the politics get so dark and you don't know who's on whose side, and it all sort of gets to the point where you say, I don't know.
I give up. That's Putin's strategy the whole way is, whataboutism and asymmetrical warfare. So he can say people will just give up on believing the truth can be found.
Exactly.
And truth is the enemy of fascism. Fascism first and foremost wants to take away our ability to believe we can even have a conversation.
And I would encourage our listeners to seek out Adam Curtis and watch his stuff, because he's brilliant on this stuff.
I'll link because I have not watched Adam Curtis. Adam Curtis. Writing that down. That's it. There's a great book called On Fascism that was really helpful to me in understanding fascism is not a governing ideology. It's not like if you elect us, then we will be fascists and we will do this thing.
Yeah.
Fascism is a means to power.
Yeah.
And so fascists don't have any interest in saying, now that we're in power, we're going to do the following for our constituents that is helpful to them.
Right.
You know, and so we think, oh, if this person is elected, they are making promises. They have an intention to fulfill these promises.
Mhm.
Fascists are saying, as soon as I get in power, it is my first goal is to make your life worse.
Yes.
Because making your life worse is what made you elect me in the first place.
Yep.
Which makes so much more, like, once I learned that, that was so helpful that, you know, there's a reason why Trump's inaugural speech was about American carnage and not, now you've elected me and here's what I'm going to do. You know, I'm here to save the day, which you could totally see from a narcissist like that. But he's beyond narcissist. It's fascism where you say, I am now just going to hurt you.
Yeah, and fascism is always, they're the enemy, we're the good guys, we're special.
Yep.
You know, only we are special, only I can save you, which is what Trump said.
And you have to say, see how things keep getting worse?
Yeah.
I'm going to keep blaming and you're going to keep trusting me because things, but you never want to say, see, I've made your life better, because then you're deactivating your base.
Yeah.
And so you just make everyone's life more miserable, but make the target's life the most miserable.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
It's you know, and I think if folks understood, well, I like to think if folks understood that, they're voting against their own self-interest. But then I realize I am importing my own framework where I'm saying, oh, you're voting for somebody who's going to make your life better. That is not the ideology. Freedom is for us, not for you. I don't care about the fact that my life will get better. Yours will get even worse.
Yeah.
Right. It's scary to see where this is going to go. And you're right. How do we fight back against that?
Yeah.
All of our
Yeah.
rhetoric is, you know, hey, I'm going to point out the way this doesn't make sense.
But that doesn't help. So, I mean, at this point, you know, being out in the street and protesting is I think the only way.
Yeah.
And we had a really good protest for trans rights here in Oklahoma a month or so ago. And it was several hundred people came out and we waved signs and we marched from the downtown courthouse to the Equality Center. And I think we got a lot of eyes, we got a lot of horn honks. It was something.
Yeah.
But I really think protest and you know, being visible, being out, organizing, and you know, being militant is the only way to do it. You know, calling your representative is a really nice thing to think might help, but it's not the solution. The solution is to get out in the street and fight it.
Well, and it's all of those, like so here in my relatively small community, we got a couple hundred people out for Black Lives Matter protests, and then we're able to sit down with the police and say, here are the things you need to change about your policies so that this doesn't happen here. And because of the protests, they heard us, right? And so it's, you know, it's doing, you know, yes, call your legislator, but they're only going to care if you were also out on the street, right?
Yeah.
If there's so, you know, balancing those. But
and I like what Indivisible is doing. I think they've got a really good sense of kind of what to target and how to target things. When I used to live in Portland, and when I was there right after the election, I signed up with Indivisible and started they went to Merkley's office every kind of week and just, you know, here's what we're worried about this week. And Merkley would write it down and we'd be, you know, visible and out there, like, here we are. We want to fight this. You know, how do we do that? And, you know, just putting your body out there and saying, I'm here. I don't like this. You know, that's the key.
And it will not ever move the folks who are the furthest, right? They are not going to go, oh, we saw your protest, we have changed our minds.
Right.
But you're moving the folks in the middle who are saying, oh,
news coverage is important. If you get the news, you know, but the problem is, of course, and I'm sure you know this with Portland, is that the news can turn on you.
Oh, yeah.
Say that you're the bad guy. You're the right.
Yeah, it was wild. So I was going up to a lot of those protests, and I would be filming myself saying, "You're seeing on the news that this whole city's on fire. Look behind me. Nothing's on fire. Like the city is not destroyed. It's this, you know, it's one street where there are actual protests going on, and the rest of the city is fine. But there are a lot of folks who believed, oh, I saw these images, and therefore, you know, the city has been destroyed by looting or whatever."
And most of the time, the instigators, the people causing the violence, are the police. And I went to a protest in Portland several years ago against ICE at the ICE detention facility in the South Waterfront.
I did that one. We may have both been there.
Yeah, so it was terrifying. You know, we were just peacefully protesting. People had volunteered to be arrested. They were, sitting on the driveway, getting arrested, and we were all peacefully kind of chanting near them. And then the ICE cops went from 0 to 100 in 5 seconds, and they started shooting rubber bullets or something at the crowd, and everybody scattered, and it was just terrifying. I was running, I was like, am I about to get shot? I don't know what's going to happen. It was so fast, the way that things escalated, the way the cops, and we're not doing anything. We're just standing there chanting.
Well, and I did experience in Portland, there are groups within the protest movement who do not share the ideology of the group. And I think some folks are going to hear that and go, oh, they're like, agents or something. And it's this planned, organized, infiltrators. What I saw was people who just were there for fun and had no idea what was going on. And so, there'd be these students from Portland State who are going, I don't really care about this. I just want to, kick a fence and upset the federal agents. And they would, instigate violence, not by attacking a federal agent, but by literally kicking a fence. Yeah. Then the feds come out, they overreact, and it turns into what for some of the people there was a game. And we were going, this is not a game. And so I stayed until the organizers started saying to white folks, don't come to this. This is, lost its focus. And then I was like, we need to stop. We need to listen to the Black organizers who are telling us what to do and not go to these. But it was really interesting to see the way it sprawled out of the control of the organizers, and people thought this is just a party. Like, no, this is got to be meaningful.
Protest tourism is not helpful.
Yeah. But you want the numbers. So there's that tension, right? How do we get lots of people and also not, have...
You want lots of people who actually care.
Right.
Lots of people who actually care and are willing to be constructive about it.
Yeah. So it's very easy from the outside to say the protesters are doing it wrong. And it's like, how would you stand up to it? How would you organize hundreds of strangers? Like, it's really, really difficult.
And you nailed it with the Black Lives Matter protest. We need to let the Black community lead, and we need to move in sync with that community and let them lead the protest. We need to recognize our white privilege in all cases, but especially when we're trying to help with a protest like that.
Yeah, the ones we do here in town are not Black-led, and so we make it very clear this is not a Black Lives Matter protest, because to be a Black Lives Matter protest is to be Black-led. And so here in our predominantly white community, we don't have that leadership. This is a solidarity action. Like we're not going to claim something that we don't have, but we're still out there just about every week, and that's that maintaining the pressure, right? But it is certainly broadened to, we're standing up to Asian hate and LGBTQIA plus hate, because those are, communities that are absolutely under attack. So, my sign is all about, protect Black trans women. Like, right now, who's most under threat?
I still have one of those nasty women get done signs that in our house we believe, and I've got that out my front window. Well, I don't now because I'm trying to sell my house. But
right.
I had that and a Progress Pride flag outside my house here in Tulsa. The whole time I was living here, just took that all that down to sell the house. But wherever I move, no matter what community it is, I'm gonna put my pride flag out. And I'm gonna dare anyone to question it.
We have a neighbor who complained about us leaving our Halloween decorations up too long, and we love our Halloween decorations. And so my fiance was like, oh, you just made a terrible mistake. And so now we have this 6-foot-tall skeleton who hangs in front, and we've just decided he stays up year round now, and we dress him up for every season. And so now he's got like the full rainbow, everything, and he's standing in front of this giant pride flag, and every season. The Easter one was maybe a little bit blasphemous. We had to kind of weigh how far were we going to make the neighbors angry for Easter, but we felt like the bunny ears modulated that a little bit. But Cecil the celebratory skeleton.
I like it. That's really funny.
Next segment is about what you're doing when you're not writing. You've already talked about the Call of Cthulhu, but as a way to kind of for readers to get to know you, because the point of the show is, not process, it's get to know these great authors. I think one great way to get to know somebody is to find out if you were a D&D character, not who would you play, but who would you be? Right. So what would be your race and class if you were a
Dragonborn monk? I'd be a Dragonborn monk. Dragonborn because just dragons are cool. Dragonborns are just cool. I like them. And monk because, and I don't mean to sound like a humble brag here, but I've done some martial arts. No, I couldn't beat you in a fight. No, I couldn't beat
Oh, yes,
anyone.
you could. I promise you could. But there is a listener who's going, not me. Me,
But,
yes, absolutely.
you know, I did some Wing Chun, I did some Aikido, I did some Kung Fu, some other kinds of Kung Fu, and I had a lot of fun with it. Being an ADD person, I can't just go to the gym because I will never do that. So when I exercise, I need a class. I need a class at a time to learn a thing, and that gets me out. So right now I'm doing cardio boxing because it's the only thing I could really find in Tulsa that's like that. And it's a lot of fun. I have a blast with cardio. I like punching a bag. It's great. It's wonderfully cathartic. But that's why I would be a monk because I like the martial arts aspect of it.
Well, and a monk, you'd have a trainer who would be your mentor figure, who'd be saying, go do the following. Yes, that I like that idea a lot. I have a heavy bag in my garage, which has been hanging there collecting dust because I too lack I need somebody to say, you need to go hit the heavy bag for a while.
Hit the heavy bag at this time for this class. And for, the class is super organized and you're doing this now and everything is very much set. And that's the only way I can exercise.
Yeah, there is a dojo that does Kung Fu. Would it be a dojo, a gym that does Kung Fu?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's another word for it, but dojo I think is a Japanese term. But
right. Anyway. Yeah, I'm crossing cultural boundaries there, but yes, there's a Kung Fu place in Salem, and I should go check it out because I think that would be really good for me. Not just physically, it would be good for me psychologically. Like it's good mental health. I'm moving this.
I'll do a pitch for anyone listening in Portland because I know you guys have Portland listeners. If you are interested in martial arts, I did Wing Chun for quite a while with Lightning Hand Academy of Wing Chun. Sifu Ray McDonald, absolutely great, fantastic class. I miss it a lot. So if you're interested in Kung Fu, Wing Chun is awesome. Watch the Ip Man movies. It's just a lot of fun. It's great to learn, and it's a great martial art.
Yeah, I will. I'll look up the link and put that in the show notes. So if folks are in the greater Portland area, they can. What was the particular teacher's name?
Ray McDonald.
Ray McDonald.
Yeah, he was Sifu for a number of years when I was there.
Lightning Hand Academy is a cool name for a school.
It is a cool name.
I like that a lot. Okay, so you are a dragonborn monk, right, and you've just been ambushed by 3 level 1 goblins. Sneak attack. What are you doing?
So assuming I'm level 2 or better, first I'm going to try to intimidate them into running away. I'm a big dragonborn. They're goblins. It might work. Depends on how I roll. If that doesn't work, first I'd use my breath weapon, which is lightning. Because what color did I say? Blue, because I'd be a blue dragonborn. So I'd be lightning, so that'd be in a 5 by 30 line, and it would electrocute at least one of them. Not sure it would kill them, but it would certainly hurt. And then assuming at least level 2, I'd use a key point to do flurry of blows, to do unarmed attacks on the other 2. And then we'd see what happens next.
I would think they would scatter. I mean, one of them has just been electrocuted and the others have been pummeled. I think that's probably going to do the trick. Excellent. Okay, well, I'm gonna let's go to break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you about what you've been daydreaming about lately. This week's show is brought to you by Miko Azul's The Staff of Fire and Bone and its sequel, The Rod of Wind and Iron. In The Staff of Fire and Bone, half-demon Cedrin Varkaris is on the run. He survived among his father's people as an Askari, sequestered behind the castle walls for his own safety. The Askari people tolerated his existence until age 15, when his demonic powers manifested. Despite being the son of a powerful regent, the Askari hate and fear him. The Shayli, his demon mother's people, hunt him as an abomination that must be destroyed. Magic is forbidden in Askari Bar, and Cedrin's powers are uncontrolled. Death and destruction follow him as he grapples with learning to use his abilities with disastrous results. With no safe haven to hide him, and few to trust, Cedrin must overcome a millennium of prejudice to acquire the 4 sacred elemental stones from the different peoples of Moralia. He needs them to create a talisman that may unify the various peoples of his world against the great demon Laylar, whose banishment nears its end. With little hope of redemption or thwarting Laylar's plans, Cedrin and his companions take heroism to a shocking new level. The choices they make and sacrifices they endure push them further than they ever expected possible, and the fate of all Moralians hangs in the balance. In The Rod of Wind and Iron, the adventure continues with more complicated challenges and higher stakes, Although Cedrin has acquired Ration, the Staff of Fire and Bone, he knows it won't be enough to save his world from the ravages it faces. The Garanth army marches against the Ascari, slaughtering everyone in their path and razing fields and towns alike. Meanwhile, an indestructible horde created by dark magic bears down on the Shaili, intent on destroying all life in Morelia. Amidst the chaos and death, Cedrin and Senna Crawl, the daughter of a notorious spy, become unwilling allies. Senna's goal is to restore her father's reputation and save her city from total annihilation. Cedrin's quest is to acquire the lost Windstone of Yesmerantha, which is essential in creating the only weapon that could potentially challenge the great demon Laylar. Natural enemies, Senna and Cedrin devise an uneasy and temporary truce in order to achieve their ends. Betrayal is inevitable. Trust is impossible. Hope and time are running out. Order your copies of The Staff of Fire and Bone and The Rod of Wind and Iron today. Authors, poets, playwrights, as some of you know, we participate in an annual fundraiser for the Alzheimer's Association called The Longest Day. On that day, people around the country and around the world do all kinds of things like walkathons and knitting and mountain climbing, and they ask their friends and families to make donations for their efforts to the Alzheimer's Association to support care for families and research to find a cure for Alzheimer's. I participated in a few walks and then said to myself, "Self, you are mediocre at walking and do not have a bunch of awesome friends known for their walking ability, but you can write and know a whole lot of other writers." So back in 2018, Not a Pipe Publishing put together our first Writing Against the Darkness team, and we've been going strong ever since. Here's the ask. You can join our team with a few clicks. If you want to, you can buy a t-shirt for the fundraiser, but that's not required. Then you post to your social media a few times asking your friends and family to pledge to support you. On Wednesday, June 21st, we all hop on a Zoom call together early in the morning to say hello, wish one another luck, and then we write from dawn until dusk, 5:24 a.m. to 9:04 p.m. here at my latitude. It's a long day, but don't worry, you can take all the breaks you want. In fact, if a Wednesday doesn't fit into your work schedule, you can do your longest day on another day before or after. The Alzheimer's Association won't turn your donations away. At the end of the day, we share out our word count and total them up and see how many words the team has written in a day, and how badly John Dover, author of Once Upon a Fang in the West, has beaten us by every year. It's fun, productive, and raises money for a good cause. If you'd like to participate, there is a link in the show notes. We would love to have you on our team. So come join our Writing Against the Darkness team and write with us for a good cause. Thank you. So I'm back with E.D. Jones. Ethan, what have you been daydreaming about lately?
Well, and I'm going to get serious again because the issue about LGBTQ and trans rights is really on my mind lately. And that's, if you want to ask me about what I'm daydreaming about the day when we don't have to worry about that, when we don't have to worry about our community being attacked. So the question that I ask is, when did the phrase religious freedom start to mean I get to tell you what to do with your life? If your religion tells you that my family is icky, then that's your business, but you don't get to make it my business. My religion tells me that my family is made in the image of God, just like all families are. Your religious freedom doesn't get to trump that, pun intended.
Yeah, it is a perverse bit of rhetorical sleight of hand to say this is about religious freedom when it's the
but only mine,
imposed.
Only religious freedom to do it my way.
I'm reminded of Popper's paradox of tolerance. We need to be able to say, I do not need to tolerate your intolerance, because tolerating intolerance only ultimately takes away all tolerance.
And then there's this implied dichotomy in a lot of the discourse between Christians and the gay community. Right. And there are a lot of gay Christians. I know several. I know a lot of them, and they're fine. They go to open and affirming congregations. They're great. So you can't have that. That dichotomy just pits people against each other. Yeah. You can be Christian and be pro-LGBT. You can be Jewish and be pro-LGBT. You can be Buddhist. You can be Muslim. You can be atheist. You can be all of these things. The dichotomy it's artificial and it's designed to divide. And that needs to stop.
And it's exploiting a tension within Christianity. I used to be a Christian myself, and one of my pastors, who's just one of the people I respect most in the world, the particular denominational organization kind of took an anti-LGBTQ stand in terms of, we love people, but also can't serve in leadership roles. Yeah. And this, cis het man went, then I'm out, which is really incredibly brave, because it's not a parishioner saying, well, then I won't come sit here. It's somebody saying, I'm going to give up my livelihood. I'm going to, you know, because he was a person of deep faith. And I just have so much respect for you know, in fact, it was more than one member of the pastoral team that said, we're leaving. And they left their own church. And I thought, wow, that's really powerful. So yeah, there are absolutely people who are people of faith who are saying, I not only, you know, are gay, but who are, you know, people who are saying, I will not be a member of a church that is going to be discriminatory in this way, and finding those affirming churches.
And I've been really lucky, and I recognize my own privilege. Having grown up Reformed as a Reformed Jew, I grew up in a bubble of kind of liberal acceptance. And my husband and I had the first same-sex commitment ceremony at Temple Israel in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I believe we were actually the first same-sex commitment ceremony at a synagogue in the state.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. And, you know, the story is, it's kind of a cool story. So my husband converted, and we were, you know, members of this is before we moved to Portland. We're members of Temple Israel. We're now members again. I'm going all over the place with the story. Let me focus it in. So one year, I think it was about 2005 or 2006, our rabbi gave a sermon for one of the High Holy Days, and said something like, I have never been asked the question about whether I would perform a same-sex commitment ceremony. And that's basically what he said. I've never been asked the question. And so we talked about it. We never had the get down on one knee moment. We just sort of talked it through and said, okay, let's have a commitment ceremony, which was awesome. I mean, I love that we did it that way. Yeah. But we sat down with the rabbi and said, okay, we're asking the question. Right. And the rabbi said, let me think it over. Let me talk with the board and see where we're at. And the rabbi took a few months and then had a meeting with us and sat back down with us and said, I can't think of a better couple to start this with. And we had a beautiful ceremony, and the whole we had a congregation full of people. Everybody was there, but it was a wonderful ceremony. Had no legal basis at the time because it was 2007, but it was very meaningful, and we still celebrate that anniversary. We have several anniversaries, of course, because we have the Obergefell anniversary, we have the Windsor anniversary.
Yes.
And but you know, that having that in front of our community, and that was the temple that I grew up with, and I had my bar mitzvah there, so it was really cool with the rabbi that I grew up with, Rabbi Sherman, who's somebody I respect a lot. He's now retired, but he's a person who I've respected for my whole life. He's always been a real source of knowledge and source of wisdom in my life. Yeah. Having him perform my ceremony, our commitment ceremony, was incredibly meaningful.
Yeah, and that is such a great story. And did your husband convert there at the same temple as well, or is that important? Yes. Yeah, so that's a neat place for him too. Like, you know, make this commitment and then make that have that be validated, right?
I have to make it clear, and he will tell you this. He did not convert for me. He converted for his own reasons, and he would want me to clarify that.
Yes, but still, I mean, it is his first synagogue, right? That's you know, and then to have that synagogue embrace both of you is really cool.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. I'm kind of overwhelmed. I think that's beautiful. And I feel like I'm now changing gears to, you know, self-promotion. But what has been going on with you in terms of your writing that we need to tell folks about?
Well, so I'm really just overjoyed to be in this collection, the Written with Pride collection. I really appreciate you selecting my stories. I'm honored to be a part of it. I think it's a great. I haven't read the other stories, but I'm sure they're fabulous.
They're really good. Yeah, you'll really enjoy it.
And you know, so that's really cool. I've been working on this novel, and it's in the hands of some trusted beta readers at the moment. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but it's like you said at the beginning in my intro, it's a science fantasy horror comedy about a werewolf astronaut who falls in love with a cyborg rock star who then gets abducted by aliens. And
it sounds right up my alley. Like you know, I'm working on the sequel to this is my first sequel. I'm in this trilogy, and one of the segments that becomes really kind of pivotal is I have a collection of baby werewolves,
Oh,
and
cool.
they're adorable until they all fall upon you and and rip you to shreds. And my fiance was one of my, she's my first reader. She's my prime beta reader, and she just loved the baby werewolves. And I was like, good. I mean, that's the whole marketing pitch is like, don't you want to read this book? It's got baby werewolves in it. Like, come on, So
yeah, this one's got werewolves, vampires, and aliens. I mean, how can you go wrong?
right, yeah, that's great. Yes, you will really like my sequel. But the third in the trilogy's got a very Cthulhu-esque monster too. So we're moving from vampires and werewolves and golems and trolls and stuff
Yeah, my story also
this
has
giant
HBO
monster.
Mine also has cosmic horror in it, and
Yeah.
Cthulhu, there's a Shoggoth at one point. There's a star vampire. A lot of my role-playing Call of Cthulhu role-playing game kind of leaked into the novel.
Oh yeah, that's well, and it's funny you mentioned that. Fable Tethras, who's one of the editors of the Written with Pride anthology, they just wrote a piece for Not a Pipe Publishing's newsletter about using role-playing games as a way to kind of develop characters to learn about world building.
Yeah,
and they really make a strong case that if you are playing regularly, you're learning how world building is done in a kind of sequential way. So
yeah, 100% nailed it. I had the same thought a couple of months ago. I had this kind of revelation that, yeah, I'm writing this novel and I'm not stuck because I'm using my experience in role playing to kind of play out scenes and how to move the story forward. So that is, yeah, 100% correct. I 100% am using my role playing experience in my writing.
Yeah. Now, do you DM or do you?
I would love to DM, but I haven't yet.
I have never DM'd, and I think it's because I'm a writer. I'm like, I would be so frustrated because I would be investing all this time in structuring this game, and then the other players would be doing the wrong thing.
Oh, they'd be over there talking to that guy that you didn't develop at all.
Yeah.
Splitting the party to go, look at something shiny over here.
Yeah, that's not my story. Oh wait, this is collaborative storytelling. Like, that would be. I love to play, but I think DMing, you have to have this kind of magnanimity where you're saying, oh, that's where the story's going now. We're going in that direction, and I'm like, this isn't my book.
The other thing you have to have as a DM is organization, and that's my real fear. Is I don't know that I can organize that much. But I have bought all of the DM, they're not called DM, the Keeper of Arcane Lore stuff for Call of Cthulhu. And I really do I'm going to keep, which is the term for that. I'm going to keep a game one of these days. I've played enough of it that I think I can do it. I think Call of Cthulhu is going to be easier to DM than D&D is, because you're not dealing with big complex battles. In fact, in Call of Cthulhu, you want to avoid battles because any of the monsters you encounter will either kill you, drive you insane, or both, and you really want to run away from them.
Yes, that's not the point. It's keep maintaining your sanity is the challenge.
So the real challenge for me again with DMing is staying organized, and I haven't quite threaded that needle, but I want to one of these days.
Yeah, well, and maybe it'll be helpful to think of it as this is part of my writing practice. I am learning about storytelling through this activity. I think that would be cool.
The other thing that I really love with writing, and I recommend anyone who's struggling with writing to do, there's a contest called New York City Midnight. And it's a contest that runs every year, and they have different contests that they run. They're in the middle of the short story contest right now, and I got through to the second round of that, but not the third. And the way it works is they give you a prompt. It's usually like a genre, a subject, and a character, and that you have a certain amount of time and a certain number of words to write. And it's really good for focusing the mind. And I've written both of the stories in Written with Pride were New York City Midnight stories. And the Ferryman in particular got first place in its heat. The way that the judging works is that you're put into heats with all the same prompts, and there are about 30 people in each heat. Well, depending on what the contest is, but on average, I think there are about 30 in each heat. And then the top 5 in the short story contest, the top 5 from each heat advance. There's also a flash fiction contest, which is really cool because you get to write 2 stories no matter what for that one. You don't have to worry about getting through. And I do that contest every year, and I've written stories for that contest that I would never have written otherwise. Resolution, my story that got into the previous anthology, is a straight drama. It's actually a very sad story about a man who lost his husband to cancer. I would never have written that without in New York City Midnight. And sci-fi, the two sci-fi stories I have in Written with Pride, I probably would have written something like that because I love writing sci-fi. And those were the only two times I think that New York City Midnight let me write sci-fi.
Yeah.
So I kind of nailed it. But I've written, drama, horror, suspense, mystery, political satire. I've written all sorts of stuff and really stretched my mind. So New York City Midnight, it costs money, but it's so worth it. You get there's a forum where you can have feedback from your fellow participants, and then you get feedback from the judges after the results are released. And I've learned a lot from things.
That's really cool. We should. We had talked about doing something like that in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Creating a forum where people would actually come live, and they would be like, "You're trapped in this room for 12 hours or whatever, and here's your prompt." And it's this writing collaborative kind of exercise, and I think that would be really fun. But
that would be cool. I would do that.
And same thing, you'd end up writing stuff you never would have written otherwise. I've had kind of all calls from magazines where I went, oh yeah, I could try and write to that. I've never written that genre before. And it ends up being, and then this magazine didn't pick it up, but now I've got this story. I'm going to send it off to somebody else, so.
Exactly. I just wrote a mystery story for New York City Midnight that was kind of a hard-boiled noirish detective story. And it didn't get me through, but I really liked the story. And so I have it now, and I'll polish it up and see if anybody wants it.
Send it off to somebody else. Yeah, so that does sound like a really. I'll absolutely check that out. New York City Midnight.
Yeah, anybody who wants to challenge yourself as a writer, that is fantastic.
I'm wondering if we could figure out a way. So we do this thing that is, and one of our advertisements is about this right now. We do this thing called Writing Against the Darkness. That's a fundraiser for the Alzheimer's Association.
Right.
And I wonder if there would be a way to do, a shared prompt and everybody write against the darkness about this and make it some kind of contest. I wonder if that would raise more money for the Alzheimer's Association or less. If people like the freedom of just being able to do whatever they want. I don't know. It's worth looking into.
That's a cool idea. I'm all about anything that can help quiet the chattering monkey mind and focus my brain on something. Really, I find really helpful. Writing anything, I'm probably not going to write anything. Writing something that I have a structure for, that really helps.
In my creative writing classes, I talk to students about how, especially when I'm teaching about poetry, about how forms are really limits, are really helpful in any art. And a painting becomes a painting because we accept that it is two-dimensional, made with paint, and fits inside this frame, right? Yep. And then within that, I say to the students, and what can you paint in there? And there's this beat, and then somebody goes, anything. Yes, that's the point. You have infinite power within these limits. What are you going to do? And so the haiku structure is a bunch of limits. What can you write a haiku about? Anything, and so getting that prompt that gives you those boundaries and then the freedom within those boundaries to create art, I think is a wonderful exercise for any of us as artists to say, okay, I know my guardrails. Now what can I do within that space that is me?
Another great example of that is National Novel Writing Month, and the novel that I'm finishing right now, The Werewolf Astronaut, started as a nano. And I wrote a terrible first draft of it, but I got through. And I wrote and then the one that I'm polishing up now is the second draft. So it's it's only the second time I've won nano. I've done nano a bunch of years, and sometimes I just trail off. But nano, the way that for people who don't know, the way that nano works is you have a month to write 50,000 words. And it's November, and there's a website where you can track your progress, which is fantastic. And so it's about 1,700 words. It's another specific number, but it's about 1,700 words a day. And you have to do it every day because otherwise you will get behind. And at the end of the month, you have 50,000 words written, and you can do whatever you want with them. But it's just a great way. It's another great way to force your brain into a kind of set of rules and limits that can help feed your creativity.
Yeah, that one's a great one for discipline. Unfortunately, I have, as a teacher, November is very bad for me. Yeah. And so I've never done nano, but I've done that same kind of, could I do this in a month in the summer, I'm glad that you acknowledged the first draft was not something to start sending out. There are a lot of us in the publishing industry. There are a lot of places, a lot of agents and places that just will not accept submissions in December, and it's
Yeah.
because of Nano.
That makes sense, actually.
You
Yeah,
know,
like,
here's my
amazing
50 or
thing.
60,000 word. It's not even long enough yet to
No.
be complete. And they send it off to agents, and agents are going, this is your first draft. This needs work still, you know.
So yeah, and when I finally got through Werewolf Astronaut, it ended up at about 80,000 words, which is a proper novel length.
Yeah,
so.
that's a complete novel. And I mean, it's not to say that you know, writing that kind of longish novella, very short novel that you write during Nano isn't an incredible achievement. Like that, you know, very few people can write a novel, let alone write one in a month. I have a ton of respect for Nano folks, but then take the time, please, to edit it before you send it off to anyone.
100%.
Yeah, and you've taken how long? Was this last November's?
No. This was, I believe I wrote Werewolf Astronaut in 2019. It's been a while. I've been struggling with this thing. I got stuck in the middle for a long time, but
the swampy middle. Yep. Yes, I could talk process with you all day, because I bet we have stories we could share about the swampy middle. The swampy middle is dangerous. Yes.
100%.
So each week we have a poll that we toss up on Twitter. And last week, guest Jason Brick asked dim sum or pho, and the winner was pho by a landslide. I'm certainly a pho fan, although I discovered recently that my fiance does not like the smell of pho. She was not a fan of me making pho in the house, but so you know, I'm sure she would have voted dim sum on that one.
I miss dim sum. I don't know that we probably have a dim sum. In fact, I think we do have a place in Tulsa for dim sum, but it's not as readily available as it was in Portland. I miss Portland dim sum. We would go all the time. I loved it. But I love pho too, and you know, any kind of Asian soup, pho, ramen. My favorite actually is Tom Kha, Thai coconut milk soup.
Oh yes.
Especially when I have a cold, I get super spicy Tom Kha, and it just clears the sinuses.
Clears everything out. Yes.
Seems better than chicken soup when you have a cold.
Yeah. So what's your poll question for this next week?
Werewolves or vampires?
Yes. And do you want to put a hand on the scale, or do you want to wait and let people?
I want people to, you know, one of the excuse me, sorry, I got a frog in my throat.
Just the thought of that soup. Now you're hungry.
One of the jokes in my novel, I guess, I don't know if I should spoil it, but I will. It has to do with vampires and werewolves. There's an ancient rivalry between werewolves and vampires. Vampires are cold aristocratic goths. Werewolves are scruffy furries. So it's sort of like a class conflict, the bloodwoisie and the proletariat. So,
nice.
You know, that's it's a good kind of, it's a good question. But werewolves, where do you stand?
Yes, and my series that I'm writing, the Convention of Fiends, is what if all the kinds of monsters in the world got together every year in Las Vegas for a convention to figure out how they're going to hide their identity, you know, and continue to feed on humanity. And so we certainly have the vampires werewolves conflict, and also some vampires and werewolves that work together, and you know, all the politics there. So yes, it is that I love that one, and we'll have a lot of fun with it. So that's a good one for our poll this week. And what's in your to read pile? What are you looking forward to checking out?
So I've been struggling to try to read, and I want to finish it, but it is it's a whole thing. House of Leaves. Anybody who knows what House of Leaves is knows what I'm talking about. I have made it about halfway through a couple of times, and I just get confused. But I really want to finish reading it because it is a work of art. And it's a novel that, if you don't know what it is, the novel itself is a work of art. And it's so, I can't even really do it justice because I haven't read the whole thing, but it's like stories within stories within stories. And there are notes and footnotes on every page, and you're never really sure where to look on the page. The page has all this different stuff on it. And it's just such a fascinatingly different sort of writing. I'm a huge fan of weird fiction. My favorite living author is China Miéville, and anything that fits into the definition of weird fiction is right up my alley. And House of Leaves is kind of my Everest right now. Is trying to get through that because it's sort of the kind of my uber weird fiction novel.
I have not read that, so I have heard many people talk about how intricate and demanding it is. So that's one that I will certainly be looking for. Mine is Wild Wings. It's just, you know, the light there is not making it visible, but in fact, I'm going to have one of the authors, the illustrator, Brian Parker, is going to be on the show next week. So
Cool.
this is a YA novel, and it's middle grade. And normally I go, middle grade. You know, I love YA, but middle grade, I'm just like, is this going to appeal? And I have heard this is just fantastic for readers of all ages. It's about a young man a boy, who loses a parent, and his relationship with his parent and his ability to kind of deal with his grieving through his art, through drawing himself superpowers, essentially.
Oh, that's cool.
And
That's
so, yeah,
cool.
so I'm looking forward to checking that one out. It is, simultaneously supposed to be very inspiring and a tearjerker, and it sounds really cool. So Wylde, I'll post to both House of Leaves and Wild Wings there in the show notes for everybody. So where can folks find you and find out more about your work and keep up on your work coming out?
Facebook.com/Write Sinister is my author page. Again, sinister because I'm left-handed. I'm taking the word sinister back. It's been maligned for too long. You have people who are dexterous, right-handed, dexterous. Everything is right, correct. Oh, yeah. And everything left is sinister. No, I'm not okay with that. I'm a lefty. I'm going to be sinister. So Facebook.com/Write Sinister. That's where I'm posting more than anywhere else. I'm not a religious poster. I post when I can. Yeah. I also have a blog at sinisterblog.com, but I am using that less now because I'm using the Facebook page more. But those are the two places where I have stuff. I am not on Twitter because Elon Musk is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so is what's his face?
Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg is, full on.
They're all not great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he facilitated a genocide in Myanmar. Like, the guy is awful. Knowingly facilitated a genocide for money. So they're not great. No. But I struggle with that, where I'm like, I am on Twitter, I am on Facebook, and I know these people are really, really terrible. And
I actually have a Twitter account still, but it got hacked, and then Twitter wouldn't let me unhack it and then close it. So somebody is posting from my Twitter account.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. Well, we will certainly not direct people there. In fact, it's funny that you mentioned that. One of our previous guests, if you go to one of the Twitter accounts that looks very much like his, it's just ads for porn. In fact, I think it's just the same ad for porn over and over and over because he's been hacked. I almost tagged that one on the show when he was a guest, and I was like, oh, that would have been bad. That's so yes, that happens. Okay, so before we sign off, there's some folks I need to thank. Thank you to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song. The song is I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3 Ds. And thanks to Halizna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you're in a band and you'd like your song to be used on the show, I would love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song. So email that to me. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. This one won't have a ton to edit out, but Doug, we always appreciate all the work that you do to make the show sound good. And I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of Not a Pipe Publishing, so please go to notapikepublishing.com and check out the amazing works written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it, and please check out Ethan's short stories. Ferryman and Bull by the Horns are in Written with Pride, and you've got, I mentioned the others at the beginning of the show, so please check out Ethan's work, tell friends about it, and then rate and review. It really does make a huge difference, so click that 5th star and let everybody know that everyone know about Ethan's work. Say, I read this fantastic story. Tell people. It really makes a difference. Similarly, with this show, please click on that thumbs up or that love it button on your podcast writer. It will really help spread the word.
And just a quick nota bene, if I may. There is another writer out there named Ethan Jones who is not me. And I just want to make sure that people know that I am not a spy, an author of spy thrillers or whatever he writes. And that's why I've gone with E.D. Jones as my pen name, because I don't want to be confused with that other writer named Ethan Jones. So just be careful when you're looking me up.
Yes.
I'm not the other guy.
Yes. And that other guy must be going, there's this weird horror that's coming out. But yes, E.D. Jones. Yeah. So please look up E.D. Jones' work. That's the Ethan that you want to be reading. Yeah, there's somebody else. Benjamin Gorman is a very common name. There's a lot, we're of Irish descent. My ancestors had like 1,000 children, each generation. So there's tons of Benjamin Gormans, and there's one out there who writes books of like academic political philosophy, and it's related enough to what I write that I'm sure there's somebody who's like, wow, this this novelist and poet is also right. And I'm like, no, he's doing different stuff. I haven't read enough of it to know if I would even agree with him, but we share the same name. So yes, so check out E.D. Jones' work. And that brings us to our sign off. We want to leave you with 3 bits of advice for this next week. So, Ethan, what's yours?
Let's see. My advice, it's not really advice, it's sort of a one-liner. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's from Neil Gaiman, and he said, "Fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten." And I really like that. I really like that quote. It means a lot. It's hopeful. Any of the dragons in your life, any of the dragons in our society, any of the horrible dragons like Ron DeSantis can be beaten. And we just have to do it. We have to just get out there and put ourselves out there and fight the power.
And this is why we write. This is why we tell the tales we tell. This is how you defeat the dragons, is you tell the stories, right? You tell the story, and the story is not literally true. The story is true in a deeper way, right? I totally agree. I love that. Second, show about procrastination. I always want to remind everybody, in life as in writing, it's the spaces between the words that make it meaningful. A book without spaces would be very hard to read, and your life would be a mess if you didn't take some space. So remember the value of those spaces. And third, no matter how much you procrastinate, we're still proud of you.